This work of fiction is intended for mature audiences. It contains themes of psychological horror and violence presented in a restrained manner. All characters and events are entirely fictional. The narrative is not intended to glorify or encourage harmful behavior.
The new year dawned with foreboding as Donald J. Trump was sworn in for his second term as President of the United States on January 20, 2025. The campaign rhetoric had promised a golden era of American greatness, but by the end of the month that golden glow was beginning to tarnish. On January 20th, Trump signed a series of executive orders that many called reckless. Among them was a decree slashing corporate taxes to historic lows while simultaneously defunding crucial regulatory bodies overseeing financial markets. By the time Wall Street closed the following day, chaos was already brewing. Traders were spooked by the lack of oversight, and a cascade of speculative trading sparked a massive sell-off. Within months, the economy spiraled into the worst downturn since the Great Depression. Major banks teetered on the brink of collapse, and unemployment began to skyrocket. The administration responded with defiance. Trump held rallies, dismissing critics as fake news and unpatriotic losers. Yet beneath the bravado, whispers of dissent, even among Republican lawmakers, grew louder. Then came the Canada Fiasco. By May, Trump's desperation to distract from the economic implosion had reached fever pitch. In a rambling press conference, he announced his past brainchild fart, the updated plan to purchase of Canada. Canada has all the things we need, he declared: oil, beautiful land, and a very polite population that would be easy to assimilate and bring under control. I've always said we should own it. And now we're going to make it happen. It's a win-win, believe me. The announcement sent shockwaves through the global community. Canada's Prime Minister, Elizabeth Mackenzie, delivered a scathing rebuttal, calling the proposal an insult to our sovereignty and an affront to basic decency. To retaliate, Trump issued an executive order imposing harsh tariffs on Canadian imports and threatened sanctions if they did not consider the offer seriously. The oil embargo. Canada's response was swift and brutal. By mid-June, they ceased all exports of crude oil to the United States, citing the Trump administration's belligerent and destabilizing threats and behavior. Almost overnight, gas prices in the U.S. soared to $10 per gallon. Lines at gas stations stretched for miles, reminiscent of the 1970s oil crisis. Frustrated Americans found themselves unable to afford basic transportation, and the trucking industry ground to a halt. Grocery store shelves emptied within days. Trump, as usual, deflected blame. In a late-night Truth Social post, he wrote, "Canada is throwing a fit because I'm negotiating tough. Gas prices are their fault, not mine. Weak leadership up north. Sad." The public, however, was not buying it. Polls showed his approval rating plummeting to an all-time low of just 19%, and at his rallies were the smallest of any president in history. Protesters flooded Washington, D.C., demanding his impeachment again. By August, calls for impeachment grew deafening. Even staunch allies like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson began to waver. Trump's inner circle, including his embattled chief of staff, struggled to contain the fallout. Whistleblowers leaked internal memos revealing that Trump had planned to use Canadian resources to fund his pet projects, including a Mount Trump Moore monument in his own image. As public outrage mounted, Trump doubled down, announcing that the United States military would secure vital Canadian oil fields, if necessary, by force. The chilling declaration drew bipartisan condemnation, with pundits warning that a second American-Canadian war was on the horizon. Meanwhile, inspired by Canada's stand, Greenland took a similar path. By October, Greenland's government announced a complete halt to all seafood exports to the United States. Key products like fish fillets, frozen halibut, and shrimp were diverted to nations like China and India, countries eager to trade without political strings attached. For Americans, this was yet another blow to an already fractured food supply chain. Trump retaliated with a mix of insults and threats, dubbing Greenland's leaders cold-hearted and ungrateful beneficiaries of American defense spending. Yet, the crisis over seafood was only a harbinger of something far darker lurking beneath the icy surface: Greenland's rare earth metals. Behind closed doors, Trump's billionaire allies had been whispering about Greenland's untapped treasure trove of rare earth metals, resources critical for producing everything from smartphones to electric vehicles. With global demand skyrocketing, these minerals represented a gold mine of unimaginable wealth. By November, leaked documents revealed that Trump had quietly signed another executive order, greenlighting a covert operation to seize control of Greenland's mining facilities. The mission, dubbed Operation Northern Lights, involved private military contractors, many with ties to Trump-affiliated corporations. The goal was simple: destabilize Greenland's government, install a puppet regime, and exploit its resources under the guise of economic partnership. What followed was a descent into horror. Reports emerged of mining sites turned into armed encampments, where local Greenlandic workers were forced to toil under brutal conditions. Environmental destruction swept through the pristine Arctic landscape, with toxic waste poisoning rivers and killing wildlife. When protests erupted, they were met with violence. Videos surfaced of unarmed civilians being fired upon and killed by mercenaries, sparking international outrage. Back in the United States, the fallout from Operation Northern Lights hit home. As more details of the atrocities leaked, Americans were horrified by the human cost of their president's greed. Meanwhile, the economic benefits Trump had promised never materialized. Instead, the cost of the operation drained what little remained of federal resources, plunging the nation deeper into debt. Greenland, backed by allies like the European Union and China, imposed sanctions on the U.S. Their refusal to trade rare earth metals crippled industries reliant on advanced technologies. Factories shuttered, and millions more lost their jobs. The American dream, already fractured, lay in tatters. By the end of 2025, America was unrecognizable. Cities were gripped by riots, food and fuel shortages persisted, and impeachment proceedings dragged on amidst partisan gridlock. Trump continued to deflect blame, accusing Greenland of sabotaging American greatness and labeling the whistleblowers as traitors. But his words rang hollow. Desperation to maintain control led Trump to invoke sweeping presidential powers. By March of 2026, he declared a national emergency on border security, enabling the military to take over immigration enforcement. Among the measures was an order designating cartels and gangs as terrorist organizations, effectively criminalizing thousands of undocumented individuals. Asylum and refugee programs were terminated overnight, and Trump sought to abolish birthright citizenship through a contentious executive order. These moves plunged the nation into further chaos. Immigrant families were rounded up en masse and sent to hastily constructed detention centers, which soon gained a far more sinister reputation. Dubbed the Trump death camps by activists and media alike, these facilities were overcrowded, unsanitary, and rife with reports of abuse. Parents were separated from their children, often without any tracking mechanism, leaving thousands of minors in legal limbo. Starvation and disease were rampant. Whistleblower accounts revealed unimaginable horrors: children sleeping on cold concrete floors, denied medical care, and subsisting on meager MREs, unfit for consumption and health. Rumors of abuse by Trump's secret police tasked with maintaining order in these camps began to surface as well. Young girls were particularly vulnerable, with reports of assault and trafficking becoming increasingly frequent. Journalists brave enough to investigate were arrested, and some disappeared under mysterious circumstances, never to be seen again. The international community condemned the U.S. government's actions, with some leaders likening the camps to concentration camps of the Second World War. Protests erupted worldwide, but Trump dismissed the outcry, claiming the camps were necessary to protect American sovereignty and to make America great again. The horrifying treatment of immigrants deepened the fractures within American society. Families turned against each other, neighbors reported neighbors, and militias formed to defend the homeland. At the same time, resistance movements grew, with activists risking their lives to smuggle immigrants out of the country and document the atrocities. As 2025 drew to a close, the death toll within the camps climbed into the tens of thousands. Children orphaned by the system wandered the streets, their future stolen by policies rooted in greed and fear. The Trump administration remained defiant, but cracks were forming. Leaks from within hinted at infighting and panic as the full scale of the humanitarian disaster became impossible to hide. In one of his most controversial moves of 2026, Trump announced in February that the United States would formally withdraw from the Paris Climate Accords, declaring them a globalist scam designed to hold America back. In the weeks that followed, major corporations seized the opportunity to roll back decades of environmental regulations. Industrial giants resumed dumping toxic waste into rivers, lakes, and oceans. Coal-fired power plants ramped up production, spewing thick clouds of black smoke into the atmosphere once again. Oil companies began fracking at an unprecedented scale, contaminating groundwater supplies across the Midwest. Residents in small towns awoke to find their drinking water brownish in color and reeking of chemicals, their children breaking out in mysterious rashes and aggressive illnesses. Global warming, now unchecked, accelerated with terrifying speed. By June, unprecedented heat waves scorched the American South, killing thousands. Wildfires consumed entire towns in California and Oregon, burning hotter and faster than ever before. The smoke choked the air for hundreds of miles, turning the skies an apocalyptic orange and an eerie gray. In the Midwest, relentless flooding submerged cities as rivers overflowed their banks. Crops failed en masse, triggering a food crisis that left millions hungry. Disease outbreaks followed, with waterborne illnesses spreading rapidly through displaced populations. Internationally, the effects were equally catastrophic. Rising sea levels swallowed entire islands in the Pacific. Mass migrations from drought-stricken regions in Africa and Asia triggered border conflicts and humanitarian crises. World leaders pleaded with the U.S. to reconsider, but Trump remained defiant, proclaiming, "America first means no global handouts, no free meals." The environmental devastation reached its zenith in September when a Category 6 hurricane, the first ever recorded, slammed into the Gulf Coast. Winds of 200 miles per hour and higher obliterated entire cities, leaving millions homeless. Survivors described it as the wrath of Mother Nature unleashed, a chilling consequence of the administration's greed and indifference. As the year ended, the United States stood on the brink of collapse. Toxic air, poisoned water, and a climate spiraling out of control created a hellish reality for millions. The withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords had not just isolated America diplomatically, but had turned it into a dystopian nightmare where greed and short-term gains took precedence over the survival of future generations and, indeed, our tiny, fragile planet. By 2035, the world bore little resemblance to the one most Americans had known a decade prior. Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords, coupled with his administration's aggressive deregulation of industry, had unleashed an environmental catastrophe of unprecedented proportions. Cities along the East Coast, once vibrant and bustling, now lay partially submerged beneath rising seas. Manhattan was divided by canals of brackish water, its lower levels abandoned to the tides. The air hung thick with smog in every major city. Breathing outdoors without a mask became a gamble with death, as air quality indices routinely hit levels that scientists once deemed uninhabitable. Children born after 2025 were referred to as the toxic generation, as many of them suffered from debilitating respiratory diseases and deformities linked to rampant pollution. Healthcare systems, overwhelmed and underfunded, collapsed under the weight of environmental illnesses. Rivers and lakes, once life-giving sources of water, turned into poisonous sludge pools. Communities reliant on these waters faced famine and sickness, their crops dead and livestock poisoned. In the heartland, desperate farmers turned to black markets for water purification tablets and synthetic soil. But these measures only delayed the inevitable. Around the globe, mass migrations reshaped continents. The Arctic, now ice-free in summer, became the site of violent clashes between superpowers vying for newly accessible oil and gas reserves. In Africa, deserts expanded with terrifying speed, swallowing arable land and forcing millions to flee. Refugee camps swelled to the size of cities, where despair and disease ran rampant. The human cost was staggering. Famine claimed hundreds of millions worldwide as extreme weather obliterated agricultural systems. Heat waves scorched entire regions, with temperatures reaching 140 degrees Fahrenheit in parts of the Middle East and South Asia. Those who survived faced flash floods and superstorms, each one more violent than the last. Coastal cities like Bangkok, Lagos, and Miami disappeared beneath the waves, their populations scattered or drowned. The political landscape fractured under the weight of these disasters. Democracies gave way to authoritarian regimes promising stability amidst the chaos. In the United States, climate refugees from submerged states like Florida and Louisiana faced hostility as they sought safety inland. The Midwest, once a breadbasket, transformed into a dust bowl where survival meant ruthless competition for dwindling resources. Yet the horrors were not merely physical. The psychological toll of living in a dying world broke the spirit of millions. Suicide rates soared, particularly among the young who saw no future worth fighting for. Communities turned on each other in violence, their desperation fueled by a lack of food, water, and hopelessness. Amidst this collapse, whispers of resistance remained. Underground networks of scientists, activists, and ordinary citizens worked tirelessly to salvage what little could be saved. They hacked into government servers to expose the full extent of corporate greed and corruption. They smuggled seeds and tools to communities on the brink of collapse. They fought to keep alive the dream of a world where humanity could once again live in harmony with nature. The closing lines of their manifesto read, "This is not the end. The earth has burned before and risen anew. So too can we, if we cast off the chains of greed and ignorance. Let this devastation be our reckoning and our rebirth." But as 2036 dawned, although Trump had long since died, his legacy and executive orders continued to claim millions of lives. The question lingered. Why did we not speak up, resist, and fight against his insanity? And is it already too late to try to really make America great again?
Hello, my Nightmare Obsession fans. We hope you loved this story, and were almost frightened to death, left wanting even more. If so, please share video and our channel link with friends and family, and ask them to subscribe, like, comment, and share with their friends and family too. We really want to create more nightmarish horror stories for you, so please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel now. We would really appreciate it. Thanks so much.